Saga's campaign begins with a scene of Alan with a bullet of light in his head and the darkness leaving out the back, showing that he's entered a new loop within the spiral he is in. He also speaks on being back at the beginning, our first hint that he's in a loop, and also, in a horror story, there are only victims and monsters, and the trick is to end up as neither, but, trapped by the genre, we are all ripped along the way. Now fading onto a scene of a deer head reflected in the lake, Alan says that he never wanted this ending, saying that this story will eat us alive line, and that the story is a monster, like the shaded from his campaign. He also says monsters wear many faces, and the camera pans to the shore of Cauldron Lake with a naked nightingale on. I forgot to put on the thing that censors his cheeks again. Hold on. Alright, let's do this again. The camera pans to Nightingale with his boxers on, but the player will not know who he is yet because you can't actually see his face. We also stumble through the forest with some people who spot us and question what's wrong with Nightingale, then leaving. We also get scared by a deer and then scratch. Along the way we hear distorted voices saying he's coming, and bright lights are beamed at us whilst we get shot and murdered by distorted figures who are the cult of the tree. Then they start carving us up with visions flashed on our screen, but they get caught by the people who saw us earlier. Now, why are they doing this to Nightingale? Well, Nightingales are taken, and these people hunt them down, and they were going to do the ritual that would have destroyed us. This ritual is also emulating how Alan took out Barbara in the first game, that's why they need to remove his heart. Alright, boom, title screen. We switch to a car driving through a forest and hear a phone call between Saga and her daughter, the one fated to drown. Also, Saga and Casey begin to talk, the real one, not the one in the dark place. Saga points out how weird it is another dead body has shown up whilst they're heading to the case. It's almost like the killer's trying to send a message. Casey says he's glad that Saga's on the case with him, telling her to take the lead and to think of him as backup. Saga also asks for advice, but Casey has nothing that will cheer anyone up. We arrive at Cauldron Lake. Now we have to look for the deputy who's supposed to guide us. Finding him, it's Mulligan. We ask him if there's any witnesses. He says yeah, the city folk, meaning those people who saw Nightingale at the start and the murder happen. They also wonder why they were out at night, as Cauldron Lake is a no-go zone. Also, they say they have nothing against city folk, but we later learn that they're just racist. They also tell us that the heart of Nightingale is missing. We also ask him how to get down to the murder site, and he gives us the directions. We also get introduced to the mine place. This is where we do upgrades, view documents, but most importantly, build cases, as solving mysteries is very important in Saga's campaign. Saga presents this place as her own take on the Mind Palace technique, but we later learn that this is all due to her being the granddaughter of Tor Anderson. Also, Casey comments on Saga already being hard at work due to using this, as it probably just looks like she's standing in place looking into space to other people. Next, Saga asks why she's taking charge of the case, and Casey answers she's a better detective, cracking cases others can't solve. This is due to her mind place technique. Saga also makes a joke on Casey retiring, and saying, you know what happens to cops saying that it's their last case. Also, Casey doesn't like nature, too much sky, he says. I track off and find an Alex Casey lunchbox. These will contain messages and manuscript fragments that will upgrade our gun. We also learn later it's Rose from the first game that's leaving us these messages, as we are the hero of this story. We also learn that Casey loves rain, and he's betting that these guys haven't set up a tarp. We also hear that the partner of Mulligan is called Thornton, as they argue over something on the radio. Thornton shows us towards the body whilst commenting on how cool FBI are, and here we are, no tarp. And I'm also glad that I put on that sensor. I did not want to see Nightingale's willy. We examine the body to collect clues and put them on the case board. We also learn that his death was like the other murders of the Taken. We also gather evidence that they were drinking whilst waiting for him. Saga asks who this guy was, and he tells us he's Nightingale, and him being here 13 years ago, as we remember he was kidnapped by the Dark Presence. Also, Casey knew him, telling us that he got fired after going crazy because his partner died. They also comment on that all the other victims disappeared 13 years ago like Nightingale. So taken from Alan Wake 1 began to emerge later from Cauldron Lake. Alright, time to put up these clues. Also, time to profile Nightingale. This is part of Saga's supernatural abilities as a seer, to interrogate people within the mind place. So, time to ask Nightingale some questions. First, we ask him, how did he get here? He says he came from the lake. He also says he was there, meaning Alan. He also says that you're not allowed in the lake unless he says so. So, Alan controls who goes in and out of Cauldron Lake. Second, we ask him why he was chosen as a victim of this murder. His answer is strange, saying, flick the switch, it goes click. Lights off, but somebody's home. Could lights are off but somebody home be him telling us he's taken? I think so. Saga also concludes this was a ritual, and Nightingale a component of it, which, she is right. Now, Saga wants to look at the lake as well, as Nightingale came from that direction. So, we head that direction, but first check on the store, and we see a document within here. It seems to be a log of what's been going on around here, detailing things like footprints and possible hunters out here in the dark. This also seems to be logs by the cult, as it's quite close to the murder location. Along the way we find a flooded area. These will be in all the areas we explore and will only clear up once we complete the overlap around here. I also find a note of someone wanting to confess their love, but they fail. They also want to explore what's inside that big building, you know, the FBC facility. Not a good idea. Also, lunchbox. It says if you ever feel scared, remember, Alan is watching over us. Alright, Rose. We also get to see that Nightingale came from a tree, and by the looks of it, there's no way he could have come from this. And there's also a manuscript page on the ground. So, Saga picks it up. Saga comments on it being written in a typewriter and having parts scratched out with other parts added in pen. Like a manuscript, Casey says. He also speculates this is a message left by the killer. Saga reads it, and it's about them finding it, and about Nightingale being one of their own. Man, I love these pages. One of my favourite parts about the first and second game. We also place up these new clues and ask Nightingale another question. What's his role within this? He says he carries his words inside him now, in his chest, and we gotta dig it out. You know what that means, examination time, so we gotta tell Thornton. They also speculate on what the purposes of these pages are. Well, I think it's for Alan to escape, but I don't really understand his goal. Now, we tell Thornton that we need to examine the body, but he tells us the guy who does that isn't in town right now, but Saga says she can do it. He also gives us a key to the shortcut, and also tells us the witnesses are at the Old Deer Diner. I found a lunchbox. This one tells us to have a heroic day, and also a note by someone who looks like they were looking at wildlife around here. He notes weird sounds coming from the wind, and the animals being, you know, weird around the lake, like avoiding it. Also sounds that are getting closer to him. The wildlife guy also spotted a weird drunk guy. Seems to be maybe a taken or cult member. Or did he see Nightingale? The guy also spots the weirdo guy again. I don't think this could have been Nightingale. He also heard wolves or wild dogs who sound weird. So he must have heard taken wolves, an enemy type we'll see later. Time to head to Bright Falls. Saga's shocked by the manuscript pages, as she's never seen a killer reach out so directly before. Alright, time to explore the town before we meet the witnesses. First, we see these coffee mascots. One of them took too much coffee, and these people discussing these faults over here. But the park is real interesting. You got the bird lady who speaks to the birds. The birds tell her that there's a shift in the air, likely referring to Alan's story. There's also these people who recite a poem in unison. How creepy. Then start having a convo about each other. I wonder if they know their poem can affect reality. I also take a peek at this guy. Looks like he's reading some sort of self-help book. Now, time to head to Old Deer Diner, and we meet up with Sheriff Tim Breaker. He greets us and offers us some coffee. He also tells us the witnesses are inside. Him and Casey also have a little small talk about how the missing person cases spiked around 2010 and then stopped when Cauldron Lake was fenced off. Now in the old deer diner, I check up on the jukebox, but it's broken. Now, time to speak to the bookers, who are the witnesses. Tammy asks if they're being charged. Saga says no, only being questioned. Saga also asks why they were here. Tammy says she's a true crime writer and wanted to research the disappearance of Alan Wake at the lake. We ask what they witnessed, but we already know what happened. Nightingale emerged from the lake, stumbling out, and then a ritual was attempted on him to destroy him as a taken. The bookers also say they looked like a cult and called themselves the Cult of the Tree. Also, Ed Booker almost let it slip out they found something. So we interrogate them in the mine place. We first ask them what they found, and they answer a necklace made of 2 triangles. We also ask them why they were there, and it turns out they really were there just to check out the lake. So we ask for the necklace, and they're surprised that Saga knew it was a necklace. We also encounter Rose, who seems to know Saga, and talks about something awful happening to her daughter, meaning the drowning. And this is all happening because of Alan's story affecting reality. We also set off to the police station and asked him if he knows anything about the Cult of the Tree. He says only as an urban legend. Now inside the station, we discover someone's been stealing the toilet paper, and that someone's been ordering beard oil to the station. I also see that one of the TVs are playing an ad by the Koskela brothers. I like these. Alright, time to begin the examination. There's writing on the heart. Body looks like it was in water before death. And there's writing on the skin, but it's smudged. And we put these clues on the board. Now checking what's inside the chest. It's a page. Wow, she's really picking that up with her bare hands. The page details Nightingale is going to hunt Saga, and that they're taking her weak to light and cannot see in that light. Also, Tim has a page he wants to show us, but gets taken by Dor. I wonder why Dor wants him. Maybe he's important to some plan he has? My theory is Dor is the villain of Control too. Nightingale awakens, talking about, show me the clicker. He attacks everyone and wrestles Saga's gun away. We also follow the instructions on the page and hide in the light, so Nightingale doesn't see us. Alright, we get our gun back and shoot him, but he disappears after a flash of scratch appears. Saga and Casey are confused on what just happened and how Nightingale got back up. I pick up a manuscript page on the floor, and it says, go to Cauldron Lake. Also, Saga and Casey are confused on how Tim disappeared, but we know our boy took him, Mr. Dor. Also, Mulligan and Thornton check up on us because they heard gunshots, and we tell them the situation. Tim disappeared, Nightingale's alive, and they start having a conversation about it must be crazy talk because monsters and magic aren't real. But they're part of the cult, so they obviously know Taken exist. Alright, now there, Saga tells Casey to request backup, and I visit the pigeon lady again. She speaks to the pigeons about if they miss Hubert and Hester or their parents. Also for them to eat more so they can stay in the sky because it's better there, and not so much in the ground or on the ground. Returning to the old Diodana, we can ask Rose on how she thinks she knows Saga, and well, she starts to splurt out the fabricated history of her being in the town, but Saga thinks she's got one of those faces. We also ask if she knows any sus people in deer masks. She says soon everyone will be wearing deer masks because of Deer Fest. Alright, let me quickly explain why, Saga isn't being affected by this fabricated history of her. It's simply because she's a seer. What's that? Well, it's someone who can do all the powers she can do in a mind place. But why is she a seer? Well, because she's the granddaughter of Tor and Odin Anderson, who are also seers, but can also see past the fabricated story. Which links into why I think Alan is Tom, because if they can see past the story and call him Tom, who does that really make Alan? Tom Zane. Well, that's if we ignore that them being old may affect their powers, which it does. So let's just ignore that to make my theory more funner. Looking at the hotel we're staying at, one of the rooms is an exact copy of, well, the place in our mind place. Also, we get to hear a piece of Pat Main's radio show, in which we will slowly see that he's, not all there mentally anymore. He keeps on speaking about Davy's Family Jerky, which doesn't exist, and is supposed to be run by a woman who's disappeared back in 2010. I also seem to find the room that belongs to the Bookers. Alright, time to head to Cauldron Lake. Also, Casey knows why Nightingale was here. He was chasing down Alan Wake. Casey also comments on how he shares the character's name of his famous books, but 10 years back he had a cult sending him book fragments to him that were copying murders from Alan's book to bring him back. This is also likely where Alan got the idea for the cult of the word from, seeing Casey deal with these crazy cult members on the outside world. Alright, time to find Nightingale. Along the way we find one of the Koskela brothers, Ilmo, and this FBC guy who's fixing a machine that alarms off when something emerges from the lake. Now, why this machine needs fixing is because one of the cult members messed with it. Also, the Koskela brothers are the leaders of the cult, and the FBC know this, but see them as a minor threat or nuisance as well. They mess around with their equipment and tamper with it to also see the alarms from the lake. So that's probably why Ilmo's helping him, as if one of the members damaged this equipment, they can't see what comes from the lake. Alright, time to follow these dark footprints to see where they go. Now back at the tree place, we get a quick jump scare. Also, there's a darkness spot we can flash with our torch to get a new page. The page tells us to use a fuse to light up the witch's hut. Also, Casey saw something in the woods, so he goes off. And boom, now the fuse is in. And the interior did change. Also, the new page tells us something about putting the heart in the hole of the witch sign and reciting something to open the overlap. Alright, time to interrogate Nightingale. He says something about being in the overlap and also something about Caldera Street Station. During this, is he playing the role of a dead body in Alan's campaign? Seems so to me. Alright, so I head back to the store and boom, a Taken comes out wearing one of those deer masks, which makes its head more hardy. Also, one thing I want to know about these Taken is they seem very different from the first game, and of course they're shaded from Alan's campaign. Now, how they are different is that the first game's Taken were more like skin suits that the Darkness were wearing, blasted and felt like popping a balloon, whilst these Taken are more physical and very meaty, and even dare to go in the woods whilst the sun's still around, whilst the first Taken wouldn't even dare to come out until the dead of night. It's an interesting thing to point out. I think maybe Scratch changed how these Taken work. Also, they have weak spots now. Alright, new page says it'll be here, and by it, I assume it means the heart. And it also says the cult were playing cards here. Also, more storage, and a gun on display that requires a puzzle to solve to get it. I'm not a big puzzle guy, so I googled it. Alright, now we got the short shotgun. It's a punchy beast of a thing, but its only drawback is its short range. But we won't be worrying about that because we're going to get close up. Alright, now we got the heart, and now we can read what's on it. Okay, time to open up this overlap. But what is an overlap? Well, to simply put it, it's a place where reality and the dark place have a connection, allowing Alan and Saga to speak. Right, time to do this ritual. We put the heart in and say the words. I kinda wish there was some sort of reference with Barbara Jagger's sign, if you put in the clicker in it, but there isn't. We get brief visions of Scratch, and Nightingale appears, and we're unable to contact Casey. We also hear the false screams of Saga's daughter from the fabricated drowning event. Also, we find a page where we get to view the confusion and loss of a Taken wonder in the dark place. And Alan's writing again. Okay, another page, this one telling of events in the dark New York when Nightingale was in the train station. The cult of the word waited for him, and that dialogue that Nightingale mutters about carrying his words close to his chest now was also said by the cultists there. Right, time to fight Nightingale. This is one of the big differences between the campaigns. Saga gets boss fights. Alright, the Nightingale fight goes down like this. Dodges slams and his AoE slams, then shoot, with him teleporting off when enough damage is done. Alright, overlap time. Saga asks who Alan is and vice versa, with the only other lines she can hear from him being Cauldron Lake, Danger, Escape, and Dark Presence. Which, boom, then Alan appears, screaming about the Dark Presence, taking his face, which he is correct about, but for now it's hiding within him. Alan also forgot to mention to like and subscribe. Wow, real fourth wall breaking. Anyway, Casey finds us, and he's a bit surprised Alan's here, and Alan is a bit paranoid that he's still stuck in the dark place, as Casey was there as well. My only explanation for that is, well, when Scratch takes over Casey, it allows him to take place in Alan's campaign. This must be the deal we saw at the start of the campaign. Also, a cult stash, which is used by the cult to keep their supplies in to fight the Taken. They also involve puzzles. And look who it is. The wolf enemies. I tend to hate any animal enemy in any game, as they tend to be hard to hit and annoying for some reason. But, at least unlike the other Taken, these guys don't have a darkness shield. Next, I find one of the nursery rhymes. Now, this is a project by the FBC to manipulate reality with art. In this case, poetry. Doing these will benefit us in the way of giving us charms. This one, for example, gives us an extra light charge to burn away a darkness shield. Oh, a new Casey box. And now, I can upgrade a weapon. Now, how this works is, Alan's writing something in the dark praise to affect how Saga's weapons work. For this upgrade, I chose a stun effect that happens after 2 headshots in succession. Moving on, I explore this cabin, which the FBC agents have been using for the nursery rhyme experiments. I collect some dolls that have been used for these experiments, and find a nursery rhyme outside that makes wool tracks appear and a charm appear inside the cabin. Running back, the station is blaring because of Alan's appearance and saying AWE, which means Altered World Event. Alright, time to return to Bright Falls, and Saga rings up her daughter. It seems that the story tried to drown her while she was trying to take a shower. It's probably good to note that the story probably doesn't affect her daughter too much, as she's probably a seer. Alright, time to question Alan. They first ask him, what happened to Nightingale? He answers, the Dark Presence took him. They also ask him who wrote the manuscript they've been finding, but he doesn't know. Also, this is where the campaign would switch over to Alan's and make you play all the way until you reach Parliament Tower, which can be annoying if you like in Saga's campaign. It also makes me question how RE9's gonna deal with such a thing, you know, having a forced switchover of campaigns. I assume whilst Alan was remembering what happened in the dark place, he tells the agents what he remembers. They ask him if Scratch or the Dark Presence got out, but Alan answers they are both, and that Scratch wants to mould the world in his image, which Casey says in Alan's image, as they both look the same. Also that the story that has been written is a horror story, and that's why Alan needs the clicker to stop Scratch. But Saga questions why she and Casey end the story. Well, it's because Alan saw her in the overlap, but for Casey, probably because he wrote about him previously? I'm not too sure. Probably visions or something from the dark place. Saga also asks if he knows about the Cult of the Tree. He says they must have the clicker, and when asked if they're working for Scratch, he says they must be, which he's wrong. He must be confusing them for the Cult of the Word in the dark place. Now, time to interrogate him in the mind place. The first question reveals he's hiding pages from us. The second question, where is Scratch? Alan answers a cloud of wrath wears his face now, meaning it's within him, but Saga thinks this means he's somewhere around here. She also asks, why does Scratch look like him? But Wake's answer is very cryptic. I can't really get any meaning out of it. Alright, we asked for the page that Wake has. This one places Saga at Watery, and that the cult has the clicker. I also watch a Koskela Brother ad, and then check out the park. What is the bird lady on about this time? Well, she's scared for her birds, wondering who will feed them when she's gone, and what she'll do when they're gone. She even says it's too late for them and her. Right, ooh, a new piece of pantomime radio. He now speaks to a guy who's making cuckoo clocks, but replaces the bird with a deer. And he's also still denying Wendy died. She was also found recently and related to the FBI stuff, meaning the cult murders. Also, this mass set a voting thing. I can't wait to meet him. During the car ride to Watery, on call with Casey, Casey asks if it's okay for Saga to go on her own, probably due to a false history there. He also says that he'll try and pry anything out of Wake. Now in Watery, we see a guy in a towel next to a sauna. We ask him about the cult of the tree, and he says they're the reason why he can't go in the woods at night. He also says Artie's here. Crazy to know he's in the real world as well. We go and see Artie singing a song with a lot of references to Scratch, The Nightless Night, the dark presence in Alan's skull, and him writing in his room. Also, Rose is here, as she works at the old people's home as well. Hold on a minute, why is there a Jotun Yo or Nightless Night poster here? Is the dark place or Alan's writing heavily affecting this place? I also found a poster of the Tom the Poet film. It says it's based on a novel by Alan Wake. Huh. And also, this thing about Tom Zane discussing him playing his own doppelganger and his mysterious disappearance. Was Tom playing the role as Alan's double, Mr. Scratch? Nah, I think they're one and the same person. Though maybe the first plan was to get the dark presence out of Barbara and giving her a new identity as Alice and him as Alan, but knowing the rules he had to get himself more stuck in the role and in the dark place, and with this story he's trying to get himself out, but the dark presence is using him. Now we see both of the Koskela brothers. They are also affected by the story, thinking Saga lived here. They're also planning to attack the lodge Alan's in and take him out, as whatever comes out the lake is bad, which, since the dark presence is hiding in him, they're not wrong. Also, Ilmo owns the trailer park we gotta go to, but his workers at Coffee World who have the keys for our trailer in the trailer park aren't answering, so we gotta go ourselves. Along the way there we find one of the fast taken, which now have the ability to separate into two separate taken, which I find kinda cool. Do you also miss how they didn't include the bird taken and the possessed objects? I do. I complete a nursery rhyme and get a charm from a moose, and get a new page. Saga begins to understand why Casey hates the woods. Too many places to hide. And she hates how her daughter's involved in this story. Also in the same area where you get the page is where you get the crossbow. This thing is interesting as well. It ignores darkness shields, so it can just be shot at the taken to take the taken out. Also the bolts can be recovered, and because it's a crossbow, this thing is really slow to reload. Okay, another completed rhyme and I get a new charm. Also, there's a Casey box here. This one seemingly filled with one of Rose's fanfics. And another Casey box after that confirms that she's accidentally been putting her fanfics in these boxes as well. Oh, new page. This one detailing the events before Scratch goes to the Dark Ocean summoning later on in the campaign, with him directing the taken towards the clicker. Right, now we're in Coffee World, and it's time to get that key, but it's locked up in this office and it's, well, locked. So, we go searching around and find these taken in a teacup, right? For some reason? Alright, now in the office there is a new page. This one talking about how one of the Coffee World employees got taken. It was after losing their memory and finding themselves in front of a well, and, well, seeing something within and falling down in it. Right, this safe has the key in, and it's locked by a puzzle. I would tell you the solution to this puzzle, but I forgot it. Now, to the trailer park. But I sidetrack and find a Casey box and this lighthouse with a rhyme next to it. Another new Pat Main radio show with the husband of Wendy, who's mad that people keep ringing him up for beef jerky. He also tries to tell Pat that she's dead, but he can't accept it. Now at the trailer park, look who it is, the Anderson brothers. I love these guys. They claim to be Saga's relations. She thinks it's maybe because of the story, but we know it's actually true. Alright, now in the trailer, we get to see more fake history stuff about Saga. Her being here with her daughter after some fight with her husband, and she may have had something going with one of the Koskela brothers. I also find another Pat Main radio show, and he's having technical difficulties now. Oh yeah, and whilst searching the trailer, she finds a photo of the Anderson brothers with the cult members, but they're only there in that photo because they offered them drinks. She also gets angry and wants to check on her daughter because she finds a paper about her daughter's death in the trailer. So she leaves the trailer whilst trying to call her husband, but sees her take a mulligan, so tries to chase him down. They head towards the Bikers Club, which is basically the cult's HQ. In here we find a page, this one telling us Mulligan and Thornton killing an innocent woman. The HQ also contains the location for the cult stashes and a few FBC documents, one saying that the group should be watched but lacks coordination, and another one detailing Rose's habits. Right, time to go in the basement, and Mulligan and Thornton in there, and so is the clicker, but they take it. We can also interrogate them on who the leader of the cult is, but their only answer is that there's two of them, which we already know to be true. There's also another page saying that there's an overlap at the parade float, and that they're in it. We can also interrogate them again on how they became taken, but I've decided to answer that. That's because the story seeked out people who were similar to the Huatari brothers, who killed someone and dumped their body in that well we saw earlier. It first tried to take over the Koskela brothers, but it didn't work so well, so they went after these two. Right, time to fight a big taken, and right, I didn't expect it to take so fast. These propane tanks are something else. Right, time to do this ritual. We need a mask, a knife, a motherboard, and a creepy moose skull of the ex-mascot of this place that died from drinking too much coffee. I also glitch out the map, and now we're in the overlap. Okay, we found a page, this one showing off their racism, saying that their kind always sticks together about the Bookers/Saga, and also their hate for Saga and Casey, and them wanting to bring up the fake death of her daughter. Another page details that Mulligan and Thornton blamed each other for the murder of the innocent woman, but both agreed that they had to hide the body in the well. This is also the event that allowed the darkness to take over him. We can also hear the echoes of Saga's daughter around here. Look, new page. Alright, this one's about honouring the dead moose who died from drinking too much coffee and using its skull for the parade. Also, Mulligan and Thornton hate the moose. Alright, time to fight Mulligan and Thornton. Thornton will hide up on this ridge and fire at us, whilst Mulligan will come straight at us with a gun. Also, they have the ability to come back from the well if we don't take out these darkness spots. Overall, I like the boss fight. Anyway, time to talk to Alan. But he's at the end of his campaign when he does this. Why? I'm not too sure. Probably some spiral loop stuff I don't get. Alright, what do they say to each other? Well, he says he's been tricked, and Scratch wrote the story, and something it's key to escape. Saga's obviously confused as he's out. Little does she know there's always a version stuck in there because of the whole spiral loop thing. He also wrote her to be the story's hero, and for her to save her family and everyone. She also asks if he put her family in the story. She also questions if these are visions in the past. I don't think so, but I could always be wrong. Oh yeah, and she's got the clicker now. Alright, time to check on the flooded areas. Starting at the trailer park, in one of the trailers we see that someone wanted to make a comic book about a singer in space. I also check out the nursery rhyme here, and another one in Coffee World. And one of the last places to check out is one of the places the FBC have been using for the Rhyme project. The person investigating on how to make art come to life is realizing that locations have to feel like, the characters lived in them. So we do the rhyme, and another one after that. Also, the FBC guys struggled with making this one and wondered if they were making the rhyme too direct and so needed to add a bit of charm to it. Now it's time to head back, and the cultists have attacked, whilst Scratch is trying to take over, and Alan wakes up. Yeah, I did it again. Alan gets up near a bunch of dead people because Scratch took over, and we get to play as Alan as well. Along the way we fight some Taken, but Scratch takes over and attacks Casey. Saga finds Alan almost being killed by Ilmo, and then the FBC take over the case from Saga. They also find Casey later on, but we don't see that. What we do see is them taking Alan, Ilmo, and they also take Yakko. After that, I check on the diner and see Rose's diary. She's been seeing messages from Alan. Now, this is probably true, as she is the one who gave him the lamp. Also, there's one entry about Cynthia being a bit weird lately. This is because she's became Taken. Moving on to the park, there's no more bird lady. And there's only this weird lady speaking to a statue I can only assume was once there. Alright, time to visit the Anderson brothers. Also, Tor calls, and he's in danger. Cynthia's attacking him. New page. This one's saying that the Anderson brothers were real party animals, and Barry managed to get a few songs out of them, and even managed to open up a nursing home for him. Alright, Rose answers the door for the old people's home, and she really doesn't want us coming in. Well, that's because of the Taken version of Cynthia. But she does eventually let us in because we asked to visit the other old people. We see Norman again, and he's straight up wearing no clothes and only a towel again, and he also thinks he's heading back to the sauna with Artie. Rose heads off and we ask Norman and Mandy May where the Anderson brothers are. Well, Odin is upstairs and Tor is hurt because he slammed his hammer into a telephone. Also, Mandy May is the one who's been making those ornaments near the Casey boxes. Also, Norman tries to flirt with Mandy May. Also, Artie's here, and because of the story, people believe he's a resident of this old people's home. Honestly, I think he probably views this as a vacation. Also, he gets to star in Tom's movie and Alan's new story. We also get a bit of obscure dialogue from him, which I have no idea what it means. I also go speak to Rose, and because of Alan's story, she believes Saga's been here before. And Saga also questions her on Odin being hurt, but she claims it's just a little bump. She's also probably keeping this away from us because she doesn't know Saga's the new hero of Alan's story, and probably thinks she's also protecting Saga. Yo, look, it's Pat Main, and he lives here because of obvious reasons. Dementia. Alright, next to Tor's room, it's shown signs of a struggle, or some sort of rampage. Now in Odin's room, he has this poem about him taking out his own eye for the wisdom of a seer, something about many worlds, which we know is true because of Tim's DLC, and also that he's lived and been reborn many times, which he could be right about. Also, he has this note about where he put his eye. It does look like he took it out himself though, but someone who stands at the threshold took it from him? Does this mean door? Also, there's something about the time to write again. Does he mean himself or Alan? Now, Saga tries to ask Odin some questions, but he's unable to speak in this state. Also, there's a picture of a mother in this room. Alright, time to talk to Odin in the mine place. We ask him what happened, but because of seer powers, he can speak to us normally in this place. He tells us that, because they're old, the darkness is eating away at him and his brother. Also, Saga asks what the light switch is. He answers it amplifies art made. He also drops that we're a seer, and that Tor is in danger because of Cynthia, and something about the wellness centre. Going upstairs we see a spiral door, which is connected to Alan's writer's room, and boom, jump scare. Artie tells us that we're not allowed in there. We attempt to get into Cynthia's room, but no luck, so we question Rose on Tor being inside the wellness centre and using our authority as an FBI agent to get in there. Now in there we can hear Tor somewhere around here. We also find a page about how the Taken Cynthia seduced Tor to take a song from him. The darkness is also attempting to take over Tor, but he's still fighting it off, but it can still drown him. This is the bed that Tor was resting on, and we see Tor run off and get jump scared by Cynthia. So we move on, and I run past the room with the rifle in it, but we need a doorknob for that. And time to do a puzzle to, open that door that Tor went through. Oh look, it's Tor on the camera feed, but before we move on, I decide to go back in the building and see a T-pose impact main. Alright, returning to the wellness centre, in one of the locked rooms, we see a new page about a guy called Gale who was taken. It says it felt good to him even though he was being torn up. Oh look, it's Gale, or I assume it to be. He's a new type of Taken, with many hands. They can sink and disappear for a bit, and try and attack you. They also throw these waves at you that kinda act like projectile attacks. Real cool. Great design. Right, now back on track, we find Tor's hammer in a wall, and get jump scared by Cynthia. Oh yeah, and Tor enters the overlap. And we got Rose over here pretending that didn't happen. But don't worry, if we interrogate in the mind place we get a phrase, Wake has returned, which convinces her that Saga is the hero of the story. Then she gives us a card to open up the doors, and a page. This page tells us how to open up the overlap, and that we need a certain record to put inside the jukebox. Alright, let's ask Odin where the record is. He thinks it's in the museum, but the truth is it's inside Cynthia's room. Moving on, we take a glance at Gale's room. It has a page inside about Barry buying this old people's home. He did pay a bunch of people to fix it, but they never did. And that's why you notice some leaks around. Okay, now time to check Cynthia's room. But jump scare, and the room's now locked. Also, Artie appears talking about go to the basement and check the generator, so we're gonna do that. Alright, now in the basement we find Blum. Who's Blum? Well, I forgot to mention it before, but he's one of the guys who works here. He's also the guy whose outfit keeps on being stolen by Artie. If you look at Artie's outfit, you can notice his photos being plastered over someone else's, and name. Also, he's one of the cult members. It's mentioned by Artie, and one of the emails reveal it. It seems Cynthia got him. Checking out this newspaper, we see a younger Barbara Jagger, who looks like Alice. One of my theories is that Alan Wake 1 was Tom's quest under a false identity of Alan to remove the darkness from her. But because of that, Scratch was born as either a double ganger or just solely possessing him. Alright, another page, this one about how Cynthia Weaver became a Taken. In short, she got attacked by, well, a Taken in the bathroom and somewhat drowned in the water. Also, we find a small clip of Jotun Yell down here, so that's cool. Okay, now we're in Cynthia's room, and well, a lot of stuff around here has been smashed. Looking around, we get to see how obsessed Cynthia is with Tom, sort of like Rose with Alan, but Cynthia has a big hatred for Barbara, which isn't really seen with Rose with Alice. Or maybe it is and we just never see it. Oh yeah, and we get to interrogate Cynthia on who Tom is, and she mentions something about the Ocean View Motel and him having enemies. So she must have saw him in the dark New York. I wonder how that interaction would have gone down. Also, there's another page detailing that she waited all these years for Tom, and now he's back in the dark New York, which she always wanted to see New York. Also, in the bath, she would become like Barbara, but better, and Tom had enemies, which are the Andersons. But, hold on, in the play within the dark New York, Cynthia is the muse of Scratch. Is she confusing Scratch for Tom? Or is Tom Scratch, which means Tom is also Alan, or the other way round? And now we got the record, so it's time to enter that overlap. And jump scare. Alright, we get to experience some looping sequences and a shift in environment. I love this. We find Tor chasing after Cynthia and he apologizes for being tricked by her. Alright, don't stay in the water too long or she will get you. Also, we gotta fix this generator to activate the boss fight. Okay, boss fight time. So she'll float about and throw these waves at you, run at you when you damage her enough, and she can also teleport. Alright, time to talk to Alan. He says he's closer to escaping now. Saga tells him that she's got the clicker, and also questions him if this is a vision from the past, when he was in the dark place, and that she will get him out, but she asks him if he put her daughter in the story. All you can really hear is him saying that he's making a story, and Saga trying to tell him to, write Logan out. Also, Tor's out now, but he's being a bit rude with his thanks to Saga. He also asks us to ask him questions in the mind place. He explains the Anderson powers basically to ask people questions in their head and see past the story. He also tells us that he was a bad father to Saga's mother, and she left, and he's regretted it ever since. But Saga's father, Mr. Dorr, didn't make that easy. I wonder why he doesn't like him. Tor also says Wake is the one who needs to rewrite his story and use the clicker to enact the changes. Saga also asks about her mother and father. Tor tells her that her mother always thought that their powers were dangerous, and that the brothers were messing with things that they shouldn't have been, probably meaning the Dark Place and Baba Yaga. And he also says that her mother had common sense, and it's not surprising that she never told her about her powers. Now, about the father, he always thought too many steps ahead, and something happened, and then he disappeared. Likely taken to the Dark Place, because, well, that's where you see him. Alright, now that's done, I can go get the rifle, and I must say, this thing is beautiful. I love using it. I also found another page, this one talking about how Rose gave the lamp to Alan. It was basically by stealing it off Cynthia and letting it sink in a shoebox into the pond. I wonder if she would have still done this if she knew it would turn Cynthia into a Taken. Again, another page, this one about how Odin lost his eye. It seems that a deal was made between either the Dark Place or Dorr, and it was for them to stay away from Tor and Odin and their family. But one day they will come for him, and then Odin's eye was taken. Actually, this sounds more like Dorr because they end up coming to Dorr in the Dark Place, but Dorr being called the Dark One. Does that mean he has more of a connection to the Dark Place than we know? Alright, another Pat Main show, and someone's trying to explain to him what happened down in the lodge, and Alan Wake was there, but because of Pat Main's memory problems, he somehow links this all to Wendy Davis. Moving on, I do a few nursery rhymes and find a new page about Alan sending messages to Rose, and that the hero needed knitwear to guide them to the Casey boxes, and that Mandy May will help with this. Once again, I stumble across another of Pat Main's shows, this time showing more of his dementia with him getting lost on a trail that he's walked many times before, but also forgetting who Wendy Davis is, and then later remembering who she is, and then trying to call her, and, doing that whole stuff about beef jerky again. Anyway, we head off to Cauldron Lake to explore, as we did get bolt cutters which can open up this new area being the abandoned cabins, which I only can assume one of these were the cabin that, Alan was actually supposed to stay in Alan Wake 1. Alright, next to Watery to meet Mayor Setter. He gives us a charm for finding points of interest and items on the map. Perfect for finding everything. Okay, I return back to Cauldron Lake so I can finish off the nursery rhyme quest, but I find a page that I didn't get before. It explains what overlaps are. They're basically made by making a work in the Dark Place and then matching the story to it outside in the real world. Anyway, during the last nursery rhyme, a briefcase appears with a message to keep it away from Witchfinder's station, so we bring it there and complete the nursery rhyme, which makes the lead researcher speak to us on the nursery rhyme project, and he says we made progress by completing them. But by doing this, I think we opened up some sort of portal to the dark place, and he stopped speaking to us as he went inside. Also, we get an extra charm slot when we do this, so I believe it was all worth it. Alright, time to check up on the police station where the FBC have set up, and stuff's went down. Agent Estevez pops up behind a door, and she tells us that the Taken have attacked, so we take him out. Now, talking to Agent Estevez, she tells us that they found Casey, and that Wake is in lockup. But to get to him, we need to turn on the power in the basement. And look who it is, it's Casey. Saga asks how he is, he says he's fine, but he really isn't. He was affected by the dark presence within the woods. Also, Casey is affected by the story, as he thinks Saga's daughter died. Okay, power fixed, and now Taken come out to attack, but it's easy work for us. Alright, time to get Alan that clicker. The Koskela brothers are obviously angry because they think Alan's a threat. Because he is. Also, new page, this one detailing just before the station was attacked by the Taken. They came from inside the station, which most likely means they were already hiding within one of the police. Okay, time to give the clicker to Wake, so we can fix things. But Scratch comes out within Wake, and attacks Yakko, taking his jacket, and goes after Saga for that clicker. Cool thing to note about Scratch, he has the same moveset as the Shaded from Alan's campaign. Also, to defeat him, you gotta activate these squares before he throws you off. To do that, you gotta unload some lead into him to stun him for a while. After activating all 3 cubes, Scratch becomes stunned and then teleports off after saying return. Saga also assumes Alan's still stuck in the dark place after interrogating him. She can also interrogate Scratch, which isn't a good idea, as it allows him some sort of control here and makes her feel sick. Oh yeah, and we also pick up the fast-firing shotgun from the police station, which is a really good gun. Shame we only get it at the end of the campaign. Also, we speak to Ilmo, which he said about his brother dying, but he also explains they took over from a group called the Torchbearers. Interesting. Anyway, before locking ourselves into, finishing the game, we check out one more last location, which is the Light Tower, which the Koskela brothers had, an idea to turn this into a giant Taken destroying beam, which is really cool. But there's also a page here. The page explains Ilmo had a dream of him murdering people. This is likely him dreaming of being in the Yo in Yo movie, but it also explains that the story was trying to turn them into Taken, but the darkness looked for other people to corrupt, that being Mulligan and Thornton. Alright, now we can finish things off, so we tell the plan to Casey, Estevez, and the Anderson brothers, then make our way to the lake. Along the way we fight some Taken, and witness the expert driving skills of Odin Anderson. Now it's time to witness another performance by the Anderson brothers, whilst fighting some Taken. Nice. Also, the summoning works, but Alan is transported to the past instead, where we originally found him. And then we get forced into Alan's campaign. Luckily, I have a save where we can just skip all that. Now we can fight Scratch, which, to defeat him, we gotta interact with these objects over here, so they point towards that box over there. Which, when done, Scratch is led into the box, with Casey and Estevez turning on the lights to force the dark presence out of Alan. But it escapes out the box and goes into Casey, which Casey Scratch comes over and nicks the clicker off us, and then throws Saga into the lake. Now with the clicker, Scratch annexes ending in Bright Falls, and then drops the clicker, with Alice catching it. Anyway, the Anderson brothers head into the lake to help Saga and us. That's how they end up playing in the dark place. Alright, Estevez gives us some guns so we can fight, and we head back to Bright Falls to fix things. Also, why is this jacket not a pickable outfit for Alan? This shot kinda reminds me of the cover of the first game. Now, time to head into this distorted reality. And now in Bright Falls, everything is sunny, celebrating Alan's new book return, and everyone's wearing deer masks. which is strange to me. Wouldn't the dark place want, everything to be drenched in night? Well, maybe everything's like this because Scratch is also the bad parts of Alan, wanting to be loved and celebrated. Also, there's this ad by the Koskela brothers, or should I say brother, as Ilmo attempts to speak to his brother Yako, who is dead, and it gives the ad a eerie feeling when watching it. Also, a singular Koskela brother being here probably explains why there's also a singular one in Alan's campaign. Food for thought. Watching the ad also gives Alan the idea to get a copy of Return so he can rewrite it. Okay, now we got our hands on the book, and we can see that the writer's room is within the Valhalla's nursing home. Also, everyone around here has become hostile, so it's time to run. But I end up dying many times whilst trying to do this. Alright, we made it. Time to go in. Oh, not this way. And we get a vision of Alice trying to help us. Look who came. Scratch. And he's chasing us down, so we gotta run. Look who comes to the rescue. It's Rose. She tells Alan that he's been leaving messages for her, which he tries to deny. Alright, time to go upstairs and see my favourite guy. Now we can fix things. Also, Alan gets a vision of the ending where he and Saga discuss how the ending should go. He's surprised to see a vision of himself in the writer's room, as it's never happened before. Also, time to change the scene to pay the price. Now back as Saga in her mind place within the dark place. She struggles whilst the darkness tries to break her like Alan, even having a dark alternative version of herself to sow doubt within her. But by reassuring herself with memories of Casey and her daughter, she is able to leave the mind place. Alright, we're back in the dark New York, but as Saga, everything's grey and empty, no shaded to be found. But that phone is ringing. It's Alice telling us to go get what's in the shoebox at the statue to make the ending come true. But it's not here. So we find Tim, and he helps us by giving us a page that guides us towards Parliament Tower. It tells us how Dor gets around here. We can also interrogate Dor, with his answer being interesting. It seems he has the ability to shift to different realities, with his next answer being equally as interesting. The dark place reflects different realities, which means Tom and Alan could be alternative versions of each other. Although I want it to be that Tom is playing the role of Alan. Also, if you don't know, Mr. Dor is a character connected to Jesse Faden's brother. So, since there's another Control game coming out later this year, I wonder how he connects to it. Okay, we grab the clicker and the bullet of light and answer the phone again. Alice tells us that Alan doesn't have the ending, and for us, the hero, to help him. So, we use the interrogate power to speak to Alan, but now they're speaking normally, like she does with the Anderson brothers. He tells us the ending has to be perfect, and they have to follow the genre to make everything right, so the hero has to pay the price. So that's where the spiral loop of madness comes in. Now, to the fountain, to get out of this place. Okay, look who's here. Thor and Odin. They're here because I'm using a New Game Plus save. They're also here because they missed us on the first time in, as in the first playthrough. Also, Thor hasn't buried his beef with Dor, whilst Odin has. Saga also asked them to leave with her, but they're staying for now. But they will see each other again, as Alan has something in store for them to see each other again. Right, now we're in the writer's room again. Time to bring Scratch out of Casey, and for Saga to shoot Alan with the bullet of light. Now, for the first playthrough, this would mean Alan looping back again. Whilst this being the New Game Plus run, this means Alan escapes the loop and becomes the master of many worlds. Also, Saga's daughter is now safe, and so is Casey. I wonder what's next for Alan. Would it be Alan Wake 3? Or does Alan have a role to play in Control Resonance, helping Dor, or not? Also, is Alice the glowing bullet of light? I don't know. And that's the ending done. I'll probably do the DLCs at some point, all as one video, not separate. But that's probably after I do my next analysis video, which I'm split on, doing Evil Within. What's that one game by Bloober Team? With the scuba diver woman. Or RE9. Anyway, you know what to do. Like and subscribe.